this is the same one that we showed before, and I thought I'd draw a line for this rider's threshold. And you can see that on the climbs, power is a super useful information because we can see that they're exceeding their threshold. And if we're trying to prescribe exercise, we can see, well, actually, we need to spend quite a lot of time over our threshold. And we can also see that there's a lot of time below our threshold, a ton of time coasting with little tiny spikes of power. So as far as understanding the demands using power, it makes a lot of sense. But then if we draw a line at their heart rate threshold, we can see that actually there's not a lot of deviation around the threshold. There's some times below the threshold and some times above the threshold. And we can see that even at times when there is a lot of coasting,
like zero power.
Yeah, it's crazy. So if we look at just this section here, we can see that power is low, but heart rate is actually above threshold. Right, so for mountain biking, this heart rate is not really telling us much, and that is because, I will tell you why. So we spent a lot of time studying vibrations. I didn't put that paper in here, but there's just this massive demand from muscles other than your legs when you're going downhill. That's because you need to dampen these vibrations. That's because what's happening is our heads are shaking a lot just from riding over the terrain. And actually what our bodies are doing are stopping our heads from shaking a lot because the rest of our body is shaking so much, dampening these vibrations. So if we didn't use our muscles to dampen those vibrations, our heads would just shake, which is the kind of last thing we want because that would result in brain damage just from mountain biking, which is not safe. So our bodies adopt this strategy automatically.
Yeah. See, I'd say like heart rate's really valuable here because it shows the demands of the entire event, despite what you may look at as coasting or doing, like literally doing nothing in terms of your power output, while your heart rate still remains above threshold. Like there's a huge demand on the body. If you go back and look at it and go, oh, I don't know why my normalized power or my average power is like so low compared to like how hard it was. And in mountain biking especially, that can be. And I kind of have like a similar reference for running. This is actually a race I did, a 35k trail race, big climb right at the start. And interestingly, pacing Matt nailed it. Went from 9th place or 10th place, I think, at the top of that big climb through to 5th. And one of the reasons was I was using a running power meter. Now, if you have a look at heart rate, it increases all the way to the top of the climb. You'd expect that as like I'm getting into an event, I'm doing more work, it becomes like quite challenging, and heart rate increases to maintain and keep up with the demands that I'm putting on my body. And then we have a look at power, and power is super constant. If anything, it potentially goes down slightly as I start to get to the top because my heart rate's going up. There was another reference point I was looking at and going, oh, okay, this is getting too hard. So although power is very consistent, again, we're getting precision, accuracy on the climbs. We got to know what we're looking at here. So I'm using both power and heart rate, knowing my heart rate thresholds. It was a near 3-hour race, so I'm not going to be flying off into zone 4 or 5. But then if we look at pace and what most people use, and a lot of the competitors I was racing against use, big climb, big drop over the first 10 kilometers of pace. So most people looking at pace and heart rate when we're running. Some people don't even look at heart rate, and the slow component of like catching my heart rate, having to catch up to the demands of what I'm putting on it, especially in a long endurance event like a 3-hour trail run. Then when we get just beyond the big climb, you can see heart rate stays elevated again, like Matt's kind of one. My power drops and then my pace goes up. So if we're just looking at pace, I want to be able to run a certain distance in a certain time. It comes down to speed or pace, the time it takes you to cover a distance, and it's all looking pretty good then. And heart rate staying elevated, but power is really down. So I was actually trying to recover on that descent, but it is very technical. So although I was trying to recover my power's lower, heart rate showing like there's not a lot that was actually recovering. And so that's where, in terms of like running power and using power within running, it's super useful, but it's still complemented by heart rate. And heart rate was something that I used throughout this run, and you can see it stayed very consistent throughout. And I was able to also maintain like a good power output.
I gotta say, this is really well paced.
It was, yeah. I passed see that heart rate spike sort of just jumping up near the end. I was able to really attack, as you can kind of see in my pace as well, up the climb, the finish, to get just eke out one more spot. It was a great race.
It's really interesting to see, like in this first bit, how your power was so steady, and it actually took your heart rate quite a while to get up. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because like, well, I don't, we weren't necessarily at altitude, but we must have climbed, I think if you can have a look on that graph, we're almost at 1,500 meters. So just touching on what you would like maybe consider altitude, or the effects of altitude taking into effect. And we climbed around 300-400 meters. So there's, a potentially like a little bit of that, but otherwise, yeah, it can take a bit, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a 42-minute uphill, right? So that's a pretty long time. Bit of the slow component going on there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dr. Matt and I started the Performance Advantage podcast to help runners, riders, and outdoor competitors integrate sports science more effectively into their training and racing.
So over the last few years, Dr. Will and I have covered topics like the lactate threshold, training zones, power meters, and fatigue. Now we're condensing these popular and misunderstood topics into practical courses.
Our courses take our same podcasting style approach to learning and education, and we break it down into bite-sized chunks that you can digest either all at once or as practical little resources to use as and when you need them.
So the biggest difference between our course and any other course you might have taken is that we don't lecture you. It's a conversation between Will and I, and we're explaining complex sports science principles in an easy to understand manner.
Yeah, we also integrate like how we use them on the regular. Our courses come with a certificate of completion, as well as a lot of takeaway resources such as training plans, scientific articles, and quizzes that you can do to check your progress along the way.
Our sports science courses are available now. Register on performanceadvantagepodcast.com for immediate access.